working for you on RTV6. From RTV6, Indianapolis This Week.
Welcome to Indianapolis This Week. I'm Katie Hines. The latest on the fallout from sexual misconduct allegations on Capitol Hill. U.S. Senate candidate Mike Braun under fire over his voting record. And Congressman Todd Rokita's bill taking aim at sanctuary cities. But first, a major setback for a congressional committee investigating claims of sexual harassment on Capitol Hill. Congresswoman Susan Brooks chairs the House Ethics Committee. Her office confirms the committee requested all records related to claims of sexual harassment, discrimination, and retaliation involving any member of Congress or congressional staff. But a letter I obtained from the Office of Compliance late last week made it clear those records are confidential and cannot by law be shared with the committee unless a hearing on the complaint is conducted and a final decision handed down. We talked with Brooks earlier in the week about why she thinks every claim should be investigated.
We take the allegations and complaints very seriously, not just against members of Congress, but also against chiefs of staff, our legislative directors, any supervisory position. And so I must say that a lot of people are coming forward about things that have happened in the past. And depending on how far in the past things have happened, we may or may not be able to take action against that member. But we want to make sure it's a thorough, fair, and objective investigation. And we want to make sure there is due process for those who are accused, but we want to provide a voice for those victims.
The federal government has paid $17 million to settle claims of sexual harassment and other workplace violations in congressional offices in the past 20 years.
In the coming weeks, I will be resigning as a member of the United States Senate.
In his speech from the floor, Senator Al Franken announced his resignation. The move came after a growing number of people in his own party, including Senator Joe Donnelly, called for Franken to step down following accusations of sexual misconduct. Franken's resignation comes days after the retirement of Representative John Conyers. Conyers faced allegations of verbal abuse and inappropriate sexual advances. A total of 8 women accused Franken of inappropriate sexual conduct. In his speech, he said some of those allegations are not true. Others he remembered differently.
I am leaving while a man who has bragged on tape about his history of sexual assault sits in the Oval Office, and a man who has repeatedly preyed on young girls campaigns for the Senate with the full support of his party.
Franken also said that he wants to see a woman appointed to fill his seat. On Tuesday, the voters will have the final say in Alabama in a special election for the U.S. Senate seat. Republican Roy Moore, accused of having sexual contact with multiple women when they were underage, is running against Democrat Doug Jones. Moore has the support of the President of the United States and much of the Republican Party. This despite explosive allegations against the Senate candidate. A Republican candidate for U.S. Senate here in Indiana is facing criticism after a new report shows he voted in the state's Democratic primaries for years. The Associated Press obtained public records from the Du Bois County Clerk's office where Mike Braun is registered to vote. The records show Braun voted as a Democrat in Indiana primary elections from at least 1996 until 2012. Braun's campaign says he is a Republican but voted in Democratic primaries to impact the outcome of those races. Congressman Todd Rokita says no one has the right to break the law. He wants to end sanctuary cities by throwing the state and local officials in charge of them behind bars. Rokita is proposing the SLAPP Act. That stands for Stopping Lawless Actions of Politicians. He said it would crack down on sanctuary cities by setting the guidelines for punishment at 5 years in federal prison and a fine of up to $1 million.
The bottom line is sanctuary cities shouldn't be allowed. We need to end them. No one has the right in this country to not follow the law. And that's what the SLAPP Act aims to stop, starting with our local politicians in liberal cities mostly, who are propping up these sanctuary cities that end up hurting people, as we saw in the Steinle verdict just last week.
The bill has been referred to the House Judiciary Committee, but no hearing has been scheduled. A strong message on a controversial issue ahead of the 2018 session. The Association of Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys is making it clear the group is against the legalization of marijuana for any purpose. The organization met with representatives from the Indiana Chamber and local law enforcement to take a stand ahead of the 2018 legislative session. The prosecutors argue the marijuana industry is targeting children with THC-laced ice cream and gummies. And while the conversation is often steered toward medical help, this group says it's more about corporate greed.
Let's just be real. Legalization of marijuana is not about taking care of our kids. It's about a profit-hungry industry of men in suits, not Woodstock hippies with joints. We're talking about men in suits trying to drive a profit and revenue.
The war on drugs isn't over. It fights day in and day out in your communities.
The push comes as Representative Jim Lucas says he plans to file a bill to legalize medical marijuana. Lucas says he's hopeful it could curb the state's opioid epidemic. The leader of Hoosier Veterans for Medical Cannabis is hopeful that bill will get a hearing. Jeff Staker says medical marijuana saves lives and, quote, if we do nothing and stay idle, more veterans are going to die. Teachers are reacting to the approval of new requirements for high school students to graduate. Currently, students need to pass the I-STEP exam and finish end-of-course assessments. But there will now be new requirements for students who start high school in 2019 beyond having to earn credit hours and pass classes. Students will need to complete a work project or service-based learning. That could be in the form of a service project or an internship. Students will also have to earn an honors diploma or a sufficient score on the ACT, SAT, or the ASVAB if they plan to enlist in the military.
If nothing changes, and looking at the data we have today, there are going to be a significant number of students who won't qualify for graduation.
How would they get to those apprenticeships, those work-based learning, if they aren't outside of the school? How would they get there? Would parents be responsible? That's something that I'm worried about.
The State Board of Education voted after hearing hours of testimony on the topic. Members of the Indiana State Teachers Association are pledging to raise their voices and push for changes to the new guidelines. This week, you will be able to learn more about the IPS plan to request nearly $1 billion in taxpayer money to help benefit teachers, students, and schools. The district is requesting a referendum on the May 2018 ballot. The district says it could be forced to freeze teacher and employee pay, cut transportation, and reduce special education services without that additional money. The property tax bill for the owner of a home valued at about $125,000 would increase about $28 per month. The IPS Board of Commissioners needs to approve the capital and operating referenda before they can appear on the ballot. You can find out more details and voice your opinion. IPS is holding public meetings on Tuesday and Thursday of this week. Both are scheduled for 6 o'clock at the Ed Center downtown. Taxpayers in Carmel remain on the hook to pay the salaries and benefits of 2 school district administrators who have been on leave for nearly 2 months. A district spokeswoman confirms the superintendent and HR director remain on administrative leave. Both continue to receive benefits and 6-figure salaries. The board announced a thorough review of district leadership back in early October. The highest-ranking Republican woman in the Indiana legislature will not seek a new term. Representative Kathy Richardson of Noblesville is planning to run for Hamilton County Clerk. That's an office she won election to back in the 1980s. She's currently the election administrator in the clerk's office and has been the House Republican Caucus chairwoman for the past 17 years. Up next, a discussion with our political insiders, the Al Franken fallout, Congressman Rokita's bill targeting sanctuary cities, and IPS's $936 million request. We're back with our political insiders, conservative Abdul Hakim Shabazz, Democrat Adam Kirsch, and Mary Beth Schneider, formerly of the Indy Star. Franken and Conyers. Let's talk first political fallout.
Oh, okay, I'll start. Sure. Well, number one, I think with John Conyers, it's basically a safe Democratic seat, so that won't change. Al Franken is interesting because if you follow Minnesota politics, this has some interesting dominoes in the state that's very divided, 50-50, and everything is up for grabs in the upcoming next couple cycles of elections. The better news out of it, good news that is when these guys get caught on the carpet, they do the right thing eventually and leave and just go away. You know, this is not 20, 30 years ago. Certain behaviors just aren't tolerated anymore, and that's actually kind of a good thing.
I think Abdul's right. I think we're starting to see a sea change, but unfortunately at this point we're only seeing it in one party. The Democrats are taking a little longer than they may have to resign, but Republicans are endorsing and supporting and giving money to a Republican Senate candidate, Roy Moore, who's a child molester and pedophile.
I'm really torn about whether this is a sea change or not. For one thing, I've been told there are going to be sea changes where women's rights are concerned most of my life, and we don't really see us there yet. And as long as we have Donald Trump in the White House, after all those women came forward with very credible allegations, he was still elected. Roy Moore still may be elected. And you don't see the Republican voters, at least, turning their back on somebody because of these kind of allegations. And until we actually see it across both parties.
But I think we have those. I won't say there was a Republican lawmaker in Texas just read in the past couple days, House representative who was sort of caught up in the same thing, who was stepping down and leaving. So I do think it's unfortunately with the slow pace of this happening, but I do think we are seeing that change in attitudes, and reasonable people, the operative word being reasonable people, will not accept or tolerate this type of behavior.
Well, that's your standard, reasonable. I mean, we are talking politics here.
I mean, you bring up Roy Moore, though. So if he wins, what does that say to the American public? Is there a different standard right now?
Well, I think if he wins, Republicans are in a tough spot. They either lose the Alabama Senate seat, which is on no one's radar, should be a Democratic seat, or they have to say we're okay with a child molester and pedophile, which is what they've done. The RNC has gone back in, is sending money to Alabama. They are working to elect Roy Moore right now, and that's a problem for the Republican Party.
Abdul?
I think what's interesting is those segment of the population, what I call, in Indiana, they would be called sort of those Lugar Republicans with the Richard Murdoch thing from a few years ago. I think it'll be interesting to see where those quote-unquote Luther Strange Republicans go, those sort of moderate, more establishment Republicans, which is why people say Roy Moore's going to win. I'm interested to see where those folks go, because they may be the outcome determinant and savior actually of the Republican Party, which is interesting because the far right and the ideologues have always hated that establishment wing, but they may actually be the saving grace in the long run, because it shows that, once again, this type of behavior not acceptable.
And it's not acceptable to Mitch McConnell. He's been pretty clear about that. The Republican Senate Campaign Committee has not backed Moore, even while the RNC and Trump have. So I do think there is a fair number of prominent Republicans who are appalled by what's happening.
And also, something to think about, too, is let's say Roy Moore does get elected, and he gets called before the Ethics Committee. Now these women have a forum to come and testify about what happened and what they allege, and this whole thing could actually see some sort of trial or some sort of public hearing. And I don't think anybody, if you're a Republican, want that being on the TV screens in all of 2018, an election year.
Are we seeing any erosion of public trust in Congress?
I'm not sure there's much public trust in Congress to begin with. But more broadly, I think we do have to sort of have a conversation about what does it mean when the institutions, not just Congress, but the White House and and the FBI, and we need to have some faith that our institutions are strong, and I think that's lacking right now.
Let's move on to the SLAPP Act. Congressman Rokita's act regarding sanctuary cities. Do you think that elected officials of these cities should be put in prison?
Todd Rokita is a friend, but this is one of the most stupid things I've ever heard an elected official put out. You cannot compel fundamental principles of federalism, and Todd should know this as an attorney, for the federal government to compel state and local officials to agree to do federal law. That is not their job. I mean, that's constitutional law 101. And basically what this is, which is what I was always afraid of in the Senate race, is that people who are usually generally smart, generally good, engage in nothing but political pandering, whether it was Todd Rokita on the SLAPP Act, whether it was Luke Messer on the whole NFL thing, that's just merely trying to appeal to the Trump voter in Indiana. That is all this is. But these people are friends of mine. I love them to death. But these are some of the most stupid things I've ever seen people put out there.
Yeah, this is all about Rokita trying to get as far to the right as where there's any daylight with Messer and Braun.
Todd Rokita was a state elected official, and I think he administered HAVA funds and things, and I would think he would know more and be more careful about alleging state and federal relationships should work differently.
Mary Beth, I'm going to put.
Like I said, we can have the discussion, about immigration and what is the proper role of the state and local authorities. That is a fair discussion. But to talk about, putting, local officials in jail, like what's next? Like you said with the HAVA Act, let's say, the states don't want to comply. Now we're going to start. Is the federal government now going to start jailing local officials? I thought that was kind of stuff you did in Iran and North Korea, not here in the United States.
Last question, Mary Beth. I want to ask you this one. In all of your decades of covering local and state government. Yeah. On IPS, the referendum, a big ask. How do they sell this? Do you see this passing?
Yeah, I am not sure. It is a big ask, and but and it's going to be tough when the opponents will say, you know, these are failing schools. That's the argument that the proponents are going to have to make too. I live in a district, I don't have kids in school anymore. I live in Washington Township. I voted for every single tax increase they've asked for because I firmly believe in good public education. But boy, I think in IPS that's going to be a real tough ask.
All right, we'll keep it at that. Thank you for being here. A sweet sign of the season coming up next, handmade in an old-fashioned candy shop right here in central Indiana. Our Erica Fly goes behind the scenes to see what goes into it.
Yes, they'll go down in history too.
I'm Erica Fly, and 6 in the City is taking you behind the scenes, showing you what goes into making a holiday sweet treat. This is the Martinsville Candy Kitchen.
The browns are cinnamon, the greens are wintergreen, these are peppermint. 200 canes per batch. We'll make 400 to 600 candy canes tonight. We made 29,900 last year.
They call it cane season. So this is the beginning of the magic.
Yep, that's the beginning.
Batches of it boiling hot.
What are the ingredients?
You got any money?
John Badger and his wife Pam.
Pam, we're there.
Are like Santa and Mrs. Claus, not in a toy workshop, but busy filling wish lists in their old-fashioned candy kitchen in Martinsville. The shop and much of the equipment dates back nearly 100 years. They bought the business in 2004.
We was at a historic meeting and they said that they were going to close down. We was both born and raised here and we didn't want to see it closed down, so first ones weren't real pretty.
How'd they taste, though?
They tasted fine, yeah.
And now they create all kinds of shapes.
This is the wow factor.
Sizes.
Oh my gosh.
And flavors.
There's grape, there's licorice.
But one still outsells them all.
Peppermint.
They learned the recipes.
And we just fold it on the table here.
Perfected the handmade process.
So there it is. Now I'm going to cut about a third, and she'll put the red color in it, and she'll take it over the cook, stretch it all out, make it all pretty red.
No machines, it's pulled by hand over and over and over again. The colors are bundled, stretched, cut, and finally shaped.
Mine is pretty good. Pretty good.
The routine wows the crowds.
Then you look out this window and you see the smiles.
Yeah, it's fun.
And the taste makes the holidays even sweeter.
I enjoy making people happy.
After peppermint, the next favorite flavor? Cinnamon. You can watch the process at the Martinsville Candy Kitchen on select days and times. You can get information at the hot button at theindychannel.com.
An organization is asking Mayor Hogsett for more money and resources for the growing immigrant population in Indianapolis. The Immigrant Welcome Center created a plan for how to do it. The organization proposes working with the Chamber of Commerce, public libraries, and schools. The goal is to find educational opportunities, job training programs, and home ownership possibilities, also to improve language access. The group says the city doesn't have enough, especially with the latest numbers showing that 125,000 immigrants live in the metro area.
Putting it together the way we did was the Immigrant Welcome Center saying, here's the integration plan. Now the city can say, okay, you got it on paper. Before we didn't. It was a talk and it wasn't working.
With the mayor's help, the group hopes to turn what is now on paper into a reality. We're told the mayor's office is looking into what can be done. Join our conversation. Check out Indy This Week on Twitter and be sure to like the RTV6 Facebook page. Up next, we're looking at the 6 things you need to know for this week. Lauren Casey is in with the 6 coming up.
Rallies and checkers. Fast foodies know the deal.
We're expecting temperatures to stay chilly for today, but definitely seeing some sunshine mixed with some clouds. It looks like the next system won't arrive until Monday, and it looks to stay a little farther to our north, but we couldn't rule out a little wintry mix in there. It'll be very light, not expecting any accumulation with that. Outside of that, it's just numbers that we're talking. 38 for today. We'll mix some sun and some clouds in there. Some breezy conditions as well. Southwest winds could gust as high as 20 to 25 miles per hour. Not quite as cold for tonight. 30 to 24 after daytime highs in the 30s. We only go back down into the 20s. And then we'll see the temperatures actually get into the 40s once we look to Monday. Overnight cooling down, though, each night, but dropping the temperatures into Tuesday. Look at this, from 40 down to 30. That's when that chance for wintry mix will be there. 40 for tomorrow. It's going to feel a little bit nicer. Again, about a 20% chance of a little bit of wintry mix. Let's talk temperatures. There they are. You see the long-term forecast here going from 30 to 34 for Thursday, Friday 38, and by Saturday we're back into the 40s.
Welcome back to Indianapolis This Week. I'm Lauren Casey. It's time for the 6, so let's take a look at 6 things coming up this week in Indy. Starting with an event for the whole family today. You can see Pigpen, Linus and his trusty blanket, and watch Charlie Brown find the perfect Christmas tree today at Clues Memorial Hall. Charlie Brown Live is coming to Butler at 1 p.m. and 4 p.m. Good grief. Well, on Monday, a national tour is making a stop right here in the Circle City. The United Methodist Communications is holding the True Meaning of Christmas tour. You can learn more about this, as well as drink hot cocoa and donate goods to local families in need. This all takes place from noon until 4 at Roberts Park United Methodist Church. And each Thursday in December, the town of Zionsville is hosting special holiday events for the public. This Thursday is Ladies' Night. Come on out to local shops for deals, snacks, drinks, and giveaways. This event runs from 6 until 9 p.m. You can come see the famed a cappella group here, Straight No Chaser, live on Saturday and then again on Sunday. The group got their start at Indiana University, and they're stopping at the Old National Center for a show as part of their Speakeasy tour. That show starts at 7:30 on Saturday. Cheers to a great cause. This Friday you can join in a bar hop with shuttles provided to local establishments. All the funds raised will go towards a number of local charities. This bar hop runs from 8 until midnight. Plus, it's a big weekend for basketball in the Circle City. I'm talking about the Crossroads Classic at Bankers Life Fieldhouse. 4 of the most storied basketball programs in our state will take the court. The Boilermakers take on the Bulldogs at noon. Indiana Hoosiers face off against the Fighting Irish at 2:30. That's what's on tap this week in Indy. Back to you.
Well, another great way to kick off the holiday season happening at the State House. Students had the chance to join First Lady Janet Holcomb and First Dog Henry to decorate Christmas trees inside one of the most important buildings in the state. Thank you for joining us for Indianapolis This Week. We'll be back in next Sunday with the week's political happenings.